Cowie and I are the Greenwich High School PTA co-presidents this year. We want to thank you all for joining us this evening and supporting the PTA. Our meeting today will be recorded and posted on the Greenwich High School PTA website. Despite any challenges with hybrid or full-time distance learning, we remain grateful to our district and our school administrators for continuously working tirelessly to keep our children in school and providing them with a safe place to learn.
Good.
Before we turn the meeting over to Tom Pereira and his team to discuss the timely topic of social and emotional learning, Ralph Mayo and I would like to provide you with a few updates. I will now turn the meeting over to Ralph so he can provide us with some timely updates about Greenwich High School. Ralph?
Thanks so much, Terry. Appreciate it. And thank you for giving me some time tonight to speak. Also, thanks everyone. Your children have been so fabulous when they're on campus. They follow every rule, everything we've asked them to do, they've done it. I'm so appreciative of you and your children. And so I can't thank you enough. One of the things I wanted to highlight tonight was a document that just came out today. It's called the Greenwich Public Schools District Digest, and Greenwich High School is highlighted in the District Digest 5 times. So Model UN, we won a essay contest. 2 of our students were named finalists in the Regeneron Science Talent Search. We had a prize winner in the Hartford Current stock market game, and a GHS sophomore became a published author. So when you get a chance, take a look at the digest. It was probably emailed to all your homes today, and read about all the good stuff that's still happening at this great high school. But my main reason for wanting to talk to you all tonight and wanting to speaking to you tonight was because we're in budget season. And so right now, the operating and capital budgets are being reviewed by our BET. I'd like as much support as we can get for the operational and capital budget. It's very important that we get the increase in that operating budget as we received a 0 increase last year. We definitely need an increase, and the superintendent has created a great budget. The Board of Education has passed that budget. So if you could support that, I would deeply appreciate it. And number 2, the capital budget is also part of our budget. And we have right here at Greenwich High School 3 big projects that we'd like to see completed. It won't be a year, won't be 2 years, might not be 3 years, but we want to see them done. And all of those projects have money in the capital budget, and we like to see that pass as well. The entryway, the new entryway to the high school, there's a building committee. It began sometime last week, but we had a meeting today that we will probably break ground on July 1st of 2022. So if we get the money to do that. Cardinal Field, as you all know, is the bleachers have come down, and they're putting together new bleachers to put on that site. Hopefully we'll have those bleachers in a timely manner, either for the spring or for the fall season. And finally, fields 3 and 4, our last 2 big remediation projects were up for a public discussion last night, and I would appreciate it if you could send our Connecticut DEEP a message supporting that project. We really need support in terms of people saying they would like to see this happen, and so we can get this done. So we can stop talking about PCBs and start talking about touchdowns and goals. So thank you, Terry, for that time, and as always, I'm available if anyone has any questions about our capital or operating budget. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, everyone, again. As a PTA, we want to thank you for your tremendous support this year of the PTA. As a result of your support, we have accomplished many wonderful things for our students and faculty. So far this year, we have funded distance learning technology grants for our music, science, and math departments, as well as a Ventures in Education grant to purchase cameras, tripods, cases, and lenses for our video production department. Later on this evening, our treasurer will provide other details about this other support we have given our school. Stay tuned in the coming months for PTA updates about our March general membership meeting and senior celebration opportunities, to name a few. As you know, we've recently announced the cancellation of Summer Fair 2021, as unfortunately, we did not receive the appropriate level of support from the vendors and thought it was in the best interest of our families to cancel the event. We look forward and are excited to plan Summer Fair 2022. As a PTA, we will continue to participate in the Board of Education meetings and support the superintendent's proposed capital and operating budget and advocate for the needs of our students and our faculty. As Ralph said, please feel free to contact the Board of Education to advocate for the needs of our students as well as the BET. Today, we will vote to approve the minutes from our December 10th, 2020 general membership meeting. Please use the chat feature only if you would like to object to the approval of the minutes. You should use the raise your hand feature if you would like to second a motion. As we are voting without objection today, it means that you should object only if you have a question about the motion that has been presented. If there is no objection, the motion will pass as presented. If there is an objection, I will open the motion for discussion. And then following that discussion, a roll call vote will be required. Now I will conduct the vote on the December minutes. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the December 10th, 2020 general membership meeting. Second.
I'll second them, Maureen Brano.
Thank you, Maureen. The motion is to approve the December 10th, 2020 minutes. If there is no objection, this motion will pass as presented. Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, the motion passes as presented. Thank you, everyone. At this time, I would like to welcome our treasurer, Ann Gustafson, so she can give us all the treasurer's report. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Terry. I'd like to give a brief overview of our finances. We currently have $286,700, which includes our checking, savings, and PayPal balances in QuickBooks. Our year-to-date net revenue is $136,000, which is about $17,000 under our projected revenue in the budget. This includes revenue from membership, donations, and matching gifts. This year, we did not have our Paint the Town Red and Summer Fair events due to COVID, which accounts for being under budget. Year to date, we've spent $61,000 on our distance learning and Ventures in Education grants, school improvements, our annual allocations in all areas of the school, including student life, student activities, each of the 5 houses, Headmaster Student Fund, special education, Windrose, and the Wellness Center. We also fund the student employment services, and we support outreach, teacher and staff appreciation, and hospitality. And we continue to support our teachers and staff through our rolling application distance learning grants. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I would like to introduce Greenwich High School's Dean of Student Life, Tom Pereira, Tom and the panelists from our local community will provide us valuable information and resources necessary to support our children's social and emotional learning and the mental health resources available in our Greenwich community. Following the panel discussion, there will be a Q&A for all to participate, moderated by Layla Horn, our VP of Parent Education. You can utilize the chat function with any questions to be addressed. Without further ado, Tom, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, everybody, for allowing us to join today on this very important topic of the social and emotional well-being of our students that we all share together. So I'm going to run through real quick what the agenda will be for this evening with our panelists. I'll go through some of our panelists' bios, and then we will get started. So I'm going to kick it off with kind of what the Dean of Student Life is seeing at the high school during these challenging times and some of the available school resources that we have. Amanda Finn will join me at the end of that. Then Ms. Harrison and Ms. Goji will help go through some community resources that are available on how to access them, as well as touching upon some skills that can help reinforce those at home. So a little bit about myself. My name is Mr. Thomas Pereira. I'm the Dean of Student Life currently at Greenwich High School. I was lucky enough to join the Greenwich community a couple months ago, coming over from West Hill High School in Stamford. This is my 15th year in education and my 9th year in total as a dean. I was the Dean of Students at West Hill. So I'm pleased to join us. Amanda Finn is a Cantor House social worker. She is also a Greenwich High School grad, I believe. This is her first year at Greenwich High School as well, and she's joining us from her former life as a member of Kids in Crisis. Tara Joji, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, is a licensed professional counselor. She's a national board certified counselor, registered play therapist, and registered yoga teacher. She currently works with Kids in Crisis as a teen talk counselor in Central Middle School and has a private practice in Stamford. She has worked with children and adolescents for the past 10 years in a variety of settings, from child and adolescent partial hospitalization programs, intensive outpatient, school, and outpatient settings. Ms. Georgette Harrison is the Director of Clinical and Community Partnerships at the Child Guidance Center of Southern Connecticut. She earned her Master of Arts and Master of Education degrees in Counseling Psychology from Teachers College, Columbia University, and holds an Infant Parent Mental Health Postgraduate Certificate from the University of Massachusetts in Boston. She's a licensed professional counselor in the state of Connecticut, a trainer for the Attachment Regulation Competency Treatment Model, a rostered trauma-informed child-parent psychotherapy clinician, as well as a Circle of Security parenting facilitator. So those are our panelists for tonight, and we are excited to go through some information with you guys. So as Ms. Cowie did say, at the end there will be an option for question and answers, and we do ask that if you put them in the chat, that would be outstanding, so that way it can help us get through as easy as possible. So without further ado, kind of what we're seeing at the high school. Well, as many of us know, school this year does not look like what school looked like beginning last year. I must say that we are in a much better place than when we were in March in terms of education. We are unfortunately seeing a lot of disengagement with our students, both socially and academically. Many of our robust students or very vibrant students are now kind of more withdrawn and subdued. With that, a lot of the difficulty that we see is that there's little to no outlets for the students that they used to have. Clubs, athletics, a lot of those are not what they used to be. Some of our athletics programs are still going on, but others such as wrestling are not going to be taking place this season, unfortunately. Clubs that used to meet in person now are meeting virtually, so it's not giving them the same interactions that they used to have. One of the biggest things that we're also seeing is the importance of contact. Building relationships with the students and the teachers is very important, and something that we're working on as best we can for our remote students as well as our in-person students. Another issue that we've seen is the idea of screen time. I know it's very difficult because many of the kids are on their devices from 8:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon. So it's really important to kind of, once they're done with school, as difficult as it may sound, to ask them to maybe put down their video games or maybe put down their phones for a screen break. I know a lot of our teachers are trying to do that within their classes as well, but again, it's proven to be more difficult than what we imagined. A lot of what's going on too, especially with our fully remote ninth graders, is this is really turning into more of an artificial high school setting. They have yet to walk into the building of Greenwich High School because they're fully remote for a number of different reasons. For that, and because of that, it's almost going to be starting from scratch, hopefully when everything is back to normal in September. So that's something as educators that we are acknowledging and we are working on to try to fix for that. And then last but not least, it's the vibrancy that I've heard such great things about with Greenwich High School, such as the student center doesn't look what it used to look like. The tables aren't there around. You don't get the buzz of the students because of it. And because of that, I mean, lunch, from what I've heard, used to be very, very loud, and it was tough to hear, but now it's pretty quiet. The kids are eating in desks. They're starting to opening up a little more than they did in September. So I think they're kind of getting used to this quote unquote new normal, but it's not what it used to be. So because of that, there's a number of different resources that Greenwich High School can provide. I think that's one of the best things that the high school has done a great job of, is the amount of resources, whether it be within the school with the house-based teams, which Ms. Finn's going to kind of touch base upon, or those that we've brought in terms of with the center, with some of the partnerships that have been made with Kids in Crisis and Liberations and some other community agencies for that. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Finn to kind of talk a little bit about some of our house-based resources that we have within the school.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pereira. Thank you all for having us tonight. And hopefully we can answer any questions you have and give you a little bit of a sense of what's been going on in the school. One thing I think we're lucky for is that we are in person for at least part of the time. As Mr. Pereira had mentioned, it has been a bit of a challenge when kids are working remotely and we are not able to lay eyes on them in person. We have to do a little bit more to reach these students. Like Mr. Pereira said, this is my first year at Greenwich High School. I'm a licensed social worker and was prior a teen talk counselor with Kids in Crisis like Tara is. So I can speak to the fact that this year is so incredibly different than any other year. But I think that what we've really seen is a huge uptick in connection and really initiating that connection. So the Greenwich High School schedule is an 8-day kind of rotating schedule. So I ensure that I see all of my students who are special education and regular education at least once per cycle. I often meet with them a lot more often than that. Students can come to the mental health staff for any reason, anytime. They do not need an appointment. They do not need even a real reason. If they just want to come in and hang out and have lunch in our office or chat about what's going on in their life, we make ourselves readily available for that because we understand how tough this year is. I think what's additionally tricky is that on top of the normal stressors that we all have in our lives, we have this kind of underlying stressor that kind of exacerbates things. So it's really, you know, when I'm having conversations with students and with parents and with teachers, I often find myself reminding people that this is a very unique time. These are unique circumstances and everyone is experiencing some level of stress. And I think that's really important for parents to hear as well, because, you know, we all tend to be a little bit harder on ourselves, especially when kids are involved. And so it's really important to remember that this is not a typical year. This is not like standard by any means. So it's really important to be gentle with yourself and take care of yourself as best as possible. We as a house team meet weekly for something called PRT. We discuss any kids who come on our radar for any reason. So as just echoing what Mr. Pereira said, we're seeing a lot of withdrawn students this year. A lot of students who are not connecting with their teachers, with their classes, who aren't turning their cameras on. We meet with teachers. I facilitate a lot of meetings with teachers and the students individually because connection during this time is so incredibly important. So we really want to maintain those relationships. We want the students to know that we're there for them. And I've seen really amazing connections made with all of the school teams. We've done some socially distanced outdoor visits to homes for students who are disengaged to try to re-engage them in the school process and in academics and just kind of in the environment in general. We provide resources, gift cards, grocery gift cards, basic needs. We have a lot of different connections within the community. So we connect students and families to resources. And now this is a time when people really need it more than ever. And this community has been a beautiful example of what it looks like for people to support one another. So that has been such a blessing. It's not just me that students have at their convenience. It is the house administrators are very actively involved in each of the students' cases. Parents can reach out to any of us for any time, any reason, at any time. We can be reached via email, via telephone. We have direct phone numbers. They're all in our email signature. And our emails are our first name and then an underscore in our last name at greenwich.k12.ct.us. I know it's a little bit long and it's tricky to get used to, but if you know the person's first and last name, it's pretty easy to then contact us. So I will say that it's been a challenge, I think, for everyone, teachers, students, parents, families, even people in the peripheral. But we are really rallying, and I think supporting one another is super important, but also making those impactful and significant connections. We're trying to do that with our students as much as possible. So for those parents out there, please encourage your kids to come stop by, introduce themselves. I'm sure we know them. I'm sure we've met them, but really encourage them to come chat, because even, a lot of kids come to me and they say, I'm not having a problem. Like, there's not something going wrong in my life. And that isn't necessary to access support. We're all dealing with something right now. And even just regulating activities like going for a walk, we try to get really creative. We'll go for walks outside. We distance ourselves, take mask breaks while we're outside if it's not too cold like today. This is happening a little bit more when there was warmer weather. We play games, socially distanced. Kids can come to my office and just color if they want. So there's a lot of different activities they can do, even if they're not comfortable talking. Just the physical presence is sometimes helpful. And then we do some psychoeducation about the brain and stress and how stress affects our brain. And when our stress response system is activated, it's really difficult to access those higher thinking parts of the brain that we need in the learning setting. And so being able to explain that to kids and to help them to understand why it's so hard to focus and why it's so hard to remember things and why, that executive functioning that we all do on a day-to-day basis is so much more challenging now, because on some level, all of our stress response systems are activated. And additionally, teenagers don't have fully developed prefrontal cortexes where these processes take place. So it's been helpful for them to kind of gain an understanding about that. And so we do it all. We do psychoeducation, we do coping strategies, we connect with resources. And when people are in need, we do everything we can to kind of meet those needs. Mr. Pereira, did I miss anything?
No, I believe you encapsulated a whole bunch. I would just add 3 other people in the houses that parents you could also reach out to. The house assistant deans are tremendously helpful.
Fantastic.
And they can get you connected with the proper people. There's also a house-based psychologist. Again, that's 1 per house, just like Ms. Finn's a social worker, that's 1 per house. And then obviously your child's guidance counselor too. So yeah, that was all very, very helpful. And then with that, we'll turn it over to Ms. Harrison, who's gonna.
And also really quick, you can reach out to any of your students' teachers. They are very responsive, and if they're not, you follow up with us and we check in with them, and you will be heard and responded to. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, go ahead, Ms. Harrison, all yours.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you so much for having us here tonight. I know that it's a long day for many of you, and the fact that people have logged on and past 7 p.m. on a work day or after a long day of taking care of kids to hear more about the mental health trends that we're seeing in our community speaks volumes about how, as parents, you're really committed to supporting your kids. So thank you for all the work that you guys do at home. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can go through a couple of the mental health trends that we're seeing. Tom, can you see my screen? Great. So in general, what we're seeing locally, and the Child Guidance Center has offices in Greenwich and in Stamford. What we're seeing locally is exactly what Tom described earlier. There's an increase in depression, anxiety, a lot of social isolation, or kids who ordinarily, might be talking on the phones or texting with their friends, suddenly not wanting to do that anymore, or only wanting to socialize with their friends through the use of video games. And sometimes not even that. A lot of sleep and eating disturbances, a lot of kids that are sleeping the day away or have these complete night and day reversals where they are awake all night long and sleeping throughout the entire day. And then of course that means that they're not getting to school, they're not logging on, or they're not sleeping at all. Their anxiety gets the best of them at night and they're having a really hard time being able to fall asleep, or they wake up having nightmares. A lot of eating disturbances, kids that are overeating and gaining a lot of weight, also because there's less physical activity opportunities as there usually is. And also kids that are not eating at all, which is very typical for kids who are in the midst of a depressive or anxious episode. And probably what the school has seen, and you as parents have seen as well, is pretty significant difficulties focusing. It's hard enough to have to, learn without, being able to access your teacher readily, or, being at home where, you're distracted by what's going on right outside your door, or, you might have the TV in the background, or, your phone is right there. It's incredibly easy to get distracted. But beyond that, I think what was mentioned earlier is that when you're in the midst of a really stressful situation like we all are, we can't focus. Our brain is very much in survival mode. And this higher order kind of thinking that is necessary for learning cannot come online if you're in survival mode. So, that's what we're seeing a lot in our clinical practice, which is very much reflecting what the nationwide trends are. So the Centers of Disease Control published a couple of months ago the results of a survey that were conducted over the summer. So this was several months into the pandemic. And these were some of the statistics that I pulled out to share with you. 75% of young adults reported having at least one adverse mental health event since the pandemic had started. More sobering, though, is that 25% of the young adults who responded to the survey said that they had seriously considered suicide in the last 30 days. That's a quarter of respondents in that age group that said that they had seriously considered suicide. And even though this survey was taking a look at the mental health of adults, so in this particular case, young adults was young adults 18 to 25 years old, we can be pretty certain that we can extrapolate it down to the younger generation. One of the statistics that has come out is that youth emergency room visits for mental health reasons have risen during the pandemic, despite the fact that the actual number of emergency room visits has gone down. And if you really think about it, if you're risking in the middle of a pandemic going to an emergency room, you're feeling pretty much at your wit's end. And the fact that that number has gone up for children is also pretty significant. So how can you as parents help? And that's a very common question that we get both, for kids who are actually in treatment, as well as just parents that are calling us on a day-to-day basis. The first thing is to start a conversation with your kids and say something along the lines of, I'm noticing a change. How are you doing? You seem worried. Tell me what's on your mind. Really, you are your child's most important support. You are the person that spends the most amount of time with your kids right now. And for those who are going to school, your teachers, or their teachers and the school staff are also the other people who have the most contact with them. When you're at home, create an open door. You can say something like, you may not want to talk now, and especially the older teenagers, they might not want to talk in the moment that you bring it up. But you can tell them, I realize that maybe you don't want to talk about this right now, but you can come talk to me about anything. And I'm ready to talk whenever you're ready. And don't be afraid to ask the difficult questions. A lot of us worry about the answer that we're going to get. But the reality is that you're not going to place anything in your child's mind by asking questions about how they're feeling or if they're thinking about hurting themselves. And actually, the research shows that children feel relief. If they've been considering harming themselves, they feel relief when someone finally asks them, because it means that it opens up the door to be able to talk about it, and also means that the person next to them, the person who's asking that question, is ready to hear the answer. They're ready to tolerate it. They're ready to help. And that's all that child needs to be able to regain hope. But also remember that it's not a one and done. You need to be able to have these conversations, not just one time. Maybe you might not want to have it every day, every time that you're sitting down at the dinner table, but make sure that it's fairly frequent so that your children know that you're serious about wanting to hear them out. Apart from that, you also just want to maintain some healthy habits. So as much as you can, try to maintain a good amount of physical activity, good nutrition, trying to really avoid having your kids with their cell phones up until like 2 o'clock at night. Sleep is so incredibly important, and especially for kids who are already having symptoms of depression and anxiety. Lack of sleep, I should say, makes everything feel worse. And as much as possible, try to establish some sort of routine or structure to the day and finding outlets for stress. And this recommendation is really not just for kids. This is for you as well. You know how they talk about on the airplane that, if the oxygen, there's a drop in oxygen in the cabin, you should put on your mask first and then help your child. At times like this, that's exactly what you need to do. You need to take care of yourself so that you can take care of your child. And right now, as parents, you have gone from having to be sort of full-time parents and for some people also full-time workers to now being, teachers and cruise directors and chefs and, whatever it is. You have now had to turn into everything for your child. And that's incredibly stressful for parents. So it's also important for your child to see you taking care of yourself and not letting those good habits slide for yourself. The other support is to seek outside help, to seek therapy. So for example, if you start to feel overwhelmed or you're not too sure about what to say or do, if you are noticing that your child is having thoughts of harming him or herself or anyone else, if your child is talking about death, or if your child asks to see someone, or if you ask them if they would like to see someone and they say yes, that would be a great time to reach out to either, a school mental health staff or to seek outside treatment. And the benefits of therapy are that a therapist can be an unbiased adult in your child's life and just an extra set of eyes and ears on your child. And they can partner with you to try to really help you support your child in the home. Now, this is not to say that your child wouldn't trust you with this information. It's just that oftentimes children don't want to worry or disappoint their parents. And so sometimes they don't share those thoughts because they feel like their parents are already stressed out enough as it is, especially under these circumstances. And so having someone else that they know is interested in them and is working with their parents to help support them can be really helpful. So there are a lot of community organizations that are local to Greenwich, and there's also ones in Stamford. In particular, the Child Guidance Center of Southern Connecticut can provide you with individualized therapy to really meet the specific needs of your child. We provide individual therapy, including some trauma-focused, evidence-based treatments if your child has gone through some sort of potentially traumatic event. We have also started to run a lot of groups because at a time of social isolation, group therapy can be incredibly powerful to help children feel less alone with their thoughts, less alone with their feelings, and like they're not the only ones in the world who are feeling this way. So we're running a lot of group therapy groups, not just for children. We actually have a couple of parent support groups as well. We provide family therapy, parent guidance sessions to help you really think about, is there anything else that you could be doing at home to support your child? And, if needed, medication management. And, pre-pandemic, we would also do psychological and neuropsychological assessments, but those have been suspended because there's really no way of doing that while social distancing. Right now, all of our services are through telehealth because we felt it was important that people not have to pick between staying safe and receiving services. So all of our services are available to families through telehealth. The other resource that you should be aware of is the Mobile Crisis Intervention Services Program. That's the program for children in your community under the age of 18 that are in the middle of a psychiatric, behavioral, or emotional crisis. So if you ever become concerned about your child's safety, if your child seems like their behavior is out of control, if you can't get your child out of bed, if they're absolutely refusing to go to school, that is an emotional crisis. And you can, the goal of Mobile Crisis is to really stabilize your child and keep your child in the community, stabilize them in the community. We want to avoid those visits to the emergency room if possible. First of all, the emergency rooms are not equipped on a regular day to be able to handle child psychiatric emergencies in a way that's fast and effective. And oftentimes you end up sitting there for hours on end, and then you're discharged with absolutely no follow-up. So the goal of Mobile Crisis is to be able to provide that immediate evaluation and assessment in the community to keep your child out of the emergency room. And you can access the Mobile Crisis program by calling 211. And you can call 211 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You will always find someone. You call 211 and you press 1 for a child in crisis, and make sure that you press that 1, because if not, you end up getting referred to like another part of 211, which will send you to a different operator. So please don't hesitate to access 211 if you're in the middle of a psychiatric emergency. All services that are coming from the home, or any calls coming from the home, are receiving telehealth services, again, so that you don't have to be concerned about someone coming into your home and risking exposure. If the call is coming from someone in the school and your child is at school, the Mobile Crisis clinician can actually go to the school and do an in-person evaluation of your child in, obviously wearing full PPE and in a socially distant way. It's just that the schools have sort of a better area to be able to do these evaluations in a socially distant way. So the way that you can access our services is by calling our main number here, or going to our website. And we have a whole host of other programs that I didn't talk about today, but those were, I thought, the most pressing ones at a time like this. But if you're interested in any of our other programs, please go to our website. But there are also a ton of resources, both in the public school system. I mean, I help cover several other towns. Greenwich is one of the most resource rich in terms of mental health services in the towns that I serve. And so please access those services at the school or in your community. And if you would like, give us a call. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Georgette. Very informative presentation. And then we will now turn it over to our final presenter for the night. Tara, all yours.
Hi, thank you so much for having me and for everyone being here. I'm going to share my screen. Second. Let's see. All right. And present. Thank you for your patience. So I'm Tara Jogi. I'm the Teen Talk Counselor at Central Middle School here in Greenwich, and I work for Kids in Crisis. And Kids in Crisis is a local nonprofit agency that offers a variety of services. Most, I think, commonly known as our 24-hour helpline. So this is a line that parents, students, family members can call, where a trained crisis counselor is there to answer the call, whether it's a student calling to give them support with any needs that they may need, or offer resources and referrals to a family. We also have our Teen Talk programs, which are throughout schools in Fairfield County. Crisis services. So through that, we can also offer outreach meetings, which is with a trained crisis counselor who can, it's essentially a family meeting to establish a plan to support the students or child that may be in need. And we also have an emergency shelter offering respite for families in need. So I wanted to get into a little bit today of why social emotional learning is of importance, especially in this time. I stole this Maslow's hierarchy of needs that I found online, but felt it kind of spoke to what we're seeing in schools. And looking at it, of course, the bottom is, your basic needs. Are students feeling safe? Are their basic needs being met? And I like to look at this as safety, right? I think we're all sometimes sending our emails, stay safe, hope you're safe. And I think this is something that is on the forefront of a lot of our students' minds. There's fears of, am I going to catch COVID or not? And sometimes that's translating in schools, like school refusal or high anxiety in school, even anxiety that we're seeing remotely with students. And above that, do they know that they are loved and missed? So that speaks to the social connection that is missing. Or students that are currently learning remote feeling connected to students in school. Right now, developmentally, social connection is most important to our teenagers, and that is something that needs to be met before they are open to learning and have the ability to learn. We are all experiencing this public health crisis, and kids have never dealt with it, and they're also learning to regulate their emotions still and appropriately express themselves. I like to say too, a lot of times that we as adults are modeling for our students. So knowing that whatever stress we're seeing and how we're expressing our stress is also how they're learning to manage their stress and needs. So again, the tools of this, and I think, the schools are doing a great job of implementing them through their curriculums. And that is only to kind of get to the next level of, okay, they're ready to learn. So I wanted to also go into common mental health challenges that we're seeing right now, and some evidence-based coping strategies that you can use with your child at home. So a common one is loss and change in expectations. So this school year is not as expected. Especially I think in high school, there's a lot more loss that they're experiencing, whether it's through sports, social events that the school commonly offers. With that, we're seeing a lot of anxiety too, because there is lack of socialization. And sometimes if there is social anxiety, that lack of stressor and not being able to expose yourself to it, I think also increases a lot of the symptoms. So that being said, with the loss and change in activities, sports, no social time, what I would suggest and what has worked with some of the students that I work with is writing a gratitude list. So writing 3 things down each day that they're thankful for. Some students will be like, I'm grateful for the Oreos that I ate for lunch, or, I'm grateful that I am another day COVID free. But that often shifts their focus and their mindset to look at what they do have instead of what they are losing or what they lost this year. And that's to say, I think that's a good strategy to use with everybody in the family. Could do it at the dinner table and model that. I think as adults, we can use that too. The second one is lack of motivation that we're seeing. I think in this part, it's also important to validate that it's okay not to be okay. I think as a parent, it's okay to meet your child where they are. I think sometimes students get frustrated with like, oh, you're not hearing me, and I think that sometimes is a clash. And I think it's important to meet them where they are and say, it's okay to not be okay right now. There are supports there that we can get in place, whether it's child guidance, maybe it's the KIC helpline. There's someone available to talk to. It could be, any resource, anyone that they feel comfortable with. The school social worker, allowing them and reiterating to them that there are supports if they need it. Some strategies that kids have responded well to is using a habit tracker. So setting a small goal and tracking, okay, I did this every day. That has helped a lot. Students get really creative with vision boards. So, this isn't forever. We will get to the other side of this. What are your goals for the future? Making a collage that's hanging up in your room. That's something that they respond really well to. And it's something that you can kind of almost do like a vision board party, and people do that virtually. I've had students do, and it's a way to have that social connection, but also reset and get motivated for certain things. Another challenge that we're seeing, and I know we've spoken about, is lack of self-care. And so sometimes, and it's going back to that hierarchy of needs, is, are there the basic needs being met? A lot of students, I think remotely, we're finding rolling out of bed and just, logging on those remote days without eating breakfast, without getting dressed, without brushing your teeth. And because of that, I know Georgette had also mentioned sleep is also dysregulated at this time. So some strategies to kind of help almost sleep train a teenager is, making sure that there's no screen time before bed. It's buying an alarm clock maybe for their bedroom so that they're not using the phone as an alarm, and maybe keeping the phone outside of the bedroom, cutting down on naps after 3 p.m., and really kind of being consistent with a bedtime and things like that. So establishing routine right now is really important, and teenagers respond well to that. And I know sometimes limits can be hard and they'll fight you on limits, but I think at the end, that structure and routine is really a saving grace. Another thing we're seeing is just no change in scenery. It's home and school, and that's it. There isn't really an outlet. Studies have shown that being outside in nature can help improve mood, It reduces stress hormones in the body, muscle tension. It can reduce blood pressure. So a lot of times I'll have students pull up pictures if they can't get outside. I know it's really cold out. So showing pictures of nature outside can have that same effect as actually going outside. There's a link there and maybe I can share it, but on YouTube, an 8-hour playlist of sounds of nature, whether it's the babbling brook, ocean, and students can have that playing in the background on a tab while they're doing their homework instead of other music or distractions. And it can kind of put you in a different relaxed state when doing that. So it's kind of changing your scenery with what we can do, especially, you know, wintertime during a pandemic. And staying active and staying socially connected during this time. I think it's important to help support our students and our children in finding balance between academics and school and also some recreation activities. And I know the recreation activities are looking a little bit differently now, but I think it's still important to really encourage that in our children. There's a few things going on. Kids in Crisis is actually having a winter scavenger hunt. They had one in the fall. And this is a fun activity that you can do as a family or maybe have your child do with friends. They can make a team and there's different challenges and working towards a prize at the end. So it's just something that they can engage with their peers socially, and it's a little bit competitive in order just to engage them into something different that maybe they wouldn't have normally done. In regards to staying active, there's different apps out there. Insight Timer is an app that offers meditation, but also free yoga classes. That can be something that you guys do as a family, but also knowing that meditation, yoga, things like that are evidence-based practices to reduce anxiety and depression. And then just finding your child's interests. So a lot of museums, zoos are doing tours virtually. You know, you can go to the Louvre and do a, virtual tour, engaging them in art classes, virtual cooking classes. So finding what their interests are and encouraging them. And it's something that you can do as a family while you are home, and maybe they can have a peer do it with them virtually so that they are staying connected. So kind of went through that quickly, but I hope there were some strategies and tools that you can kind of engage and practice with your child and use them. Kids in Crisis is always there. So if there is a support that you're like, my kid's interested in this, but I don't know what's going on right now. You can call Kids in Crisis and ask, hey, do you know of any activities going on? And we'd be more than happy to find out and link you to any services that we are aware of. So that's quick synopsis for me. If anybody has any questions in particular, you can feel free to put any questions in the chat and be more than happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Tara. This is Layla Horn. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say that if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And of course, thank you so much to our wonderful presenters. I personally thought that was incredibly informative and interesting. And I'm sure we all have quite a few questions on how to engage our teenagers. The first question that I'm getting is that Kids in Crisis scavenger hunt on your website? So Tara, that's for you.
Sorry. Yeah, if you go to crisis.org, and I can even type that in the chat, there is a link. I think if you scroll at the bottom under latest news, there should be a flyer that you can even scan the QR code there.
And actually, maybe maybe it's a good idea for us as a community to share some virtual fun, like the Louvre, or like you mentioned. Maybe we can all find a way to share these resources, through the PTA. I don't see any questions at the moment, but I actually had a question, and I don't know which one of you wants to answer, any of you. I think my biggest challenge, I have 3 teenagers, is yes, sit around the table. Like you said, it's not one and done, but gosh, like what are some tricks of just getting them to sit there and talk? I mean, I think that's the biggest challenge. Like, how do you reel them in? So for me, that's always the hardest thing, is keeping them engaged in the conversation. And how do we do that?
I mean, I'm thinking about my time as a classroom teacher, where you'd have those kids that were really quiet or not really willing to kind of engage, is really kind of figuring out, I mean, just ask them, hey, what's going on? Something as simple as that would help open a conversation, I felt. And it's not very, you're not attacking the kids, saying, you just, hey, what's going on? How's your day? Something as similar as that, and build off the conversation would be my recommendation.
I also think talking about things that they're interested in, even if you don't share those interests, is really important. I think that's a really good way to connect. When you get somebody talking about something that they're passionate about or that they enjoy, you'll often find that that's when they really, so even if it's the video games that you don't necessarily want them playing, I think using that as a tool to connect with them is really important, because I notice even for myself, like I'm like, wait, I'm young. I'm not that young, but but there are so many things that they talk about, and I'm like, I have no idea what that is or what that means. So I ask them, can you explain that to me? I know I'm old and I don't know anything. So please, like, tell me about that. I'd love to hear about that game and what it entails. And I think that's a really good way to get them to start talking. I think it's hard if you're just diving into the serious stuff, because kids are like, oh, I don't want to talk about it, and then let the conversation kind of take its course, and it can eventually lead there. Another thing is like, what's something good that happened to you today or in the last week? Tell me something that you got excited about, or it could be, even the smallest thing. But I think taking a positive approach initially to get them talking, and then it's about that continuous relationship building, letting them know that they can come to you and talk about things. I think one of the main deterrents for kids is fear, afraid of how their parents are going to react. Are they going to get in trouble? Is this going to stress them out? So I think that's something to work on regularly, is saying, this is in the next hour, whatever we talk about, you're not going to get consequences for, but I want you to be honest with me, something you're struggling with. I agree with you here and now. I'm not going to get upset or angry. I just want to know what's going on with you, because I think a lot of what holds them back is teenagers feel like they have to be secretive, because a lot of what they do isn't acceptable in their parents' eyes. So I think creating that safe space for them that says, like, okay, listen, we're not going to have consequences, but talk to me about what's been going on, and then work with them to problem solve and to say, something I say a lot to my students and people in general is, I wonder what would happen if you tried this. So it's not saying, why don't you do this? Or, you should really A, B, and C. But really saying, like, I've been in a situation like that before, and I did this and it worked out well for me, or it didn't. I wonder what would happen if you tried another thing. Or I think leaving the control to them instead of telling them what to do, really just coming in as a support and validating them. Validation is something all humans crave. We all want to feel understood. We all want to feel connected. So just saying, like, listen, I get it. This is a hard year and nobody is doing their best right now. How can I support you? I think that's
that makes sense. It's all very positive, and then even if as parents maybe we're not in a good mindset, just sticking to the positive, even if it's hard, right? So right. I think that's because I think at school, obviously that's easier for you to do because you're educators and you're a therapist or a social workers, or so that's a good. I have another sort of comment, but maybe it could lead to a question. It says, thank you for sharing all this information, having this conversation, which should have been ongoing since March. So I guess maybe my maybe I'm going to interpret this as, so is there going to be anything going forward that's going to be different? It's just going to be more focused on the mental health and the social emotional. I mean, it's obviously more specific to the high school, but I mean, I don't know. I think you're doing everything that you can. I think there's an immense amount of resources out there. So I think that tonight we've proven that there's so many people that want to help. And so I guess, is there anything else that parents and students should be looking for or forward to in the second half of the year for mental health and social emotional learning?
Well, I do know that SEL is becoming more and more ingrained into the curriculum organically in our health classes. I know we have the SEL block, which helps with our staggered dismissal, that we kind of touch upon some of these skills. But I think holistically, SEL from your world language class, your math class, is going to start to get more organically pushed into the curriculum, because obviously if you don't have a relationship, or the kid's not, mentally there, it doesn't matter what 9 times 9 is, you're not going to reach that young man or young lady or young child. So that's kind of getting pushed in, and we're looking at ways to kind of incorporate that into a way where it's, not just a kid kind of talking about their feelings, or just like, like everybody's kind of said, more of an organic kind of conversation. So kids are comfortable expressing themselves and know how to express themselves. And I think the biggest kind of takeaway I want to kind of leave with our parents is that you're not alone here. You have a number of, as we express, resources here. So even if you're, you guys have with your kids more often than we see them for certain blocks of a day, feel free to reach out to any of the high school, any of the house team members to discuss. I mean, if you're struggling with kind of how you want to kind of approach the conversation with a kid, say I don't think there anymore, but let's say you found cigarettes in their room and you want to kind of think tank on to how to have that conversation, please reach out and we'll help with you for that. For the big thing.
Sorry. May I just add something before you go on?
Yeah, go.
As educators, we actually have our own goals, and all of our goals this year are focused around social emotional learning. So this is teachers, social workers, psychologists, administrators, all of our goals that we're working on this year are specifically focused on that as well. So that's an added layer built in to ensure that this is being addressed on a kind of widespread, holistic level.
And I think that as a community, for Greenwich High School and Greenwich, I think it would be really interesting, and this is the conversation that we can have, is, how do we share all of this information for parents? Because I think tonight was, even for me, who, I've lived in Greenwich a long time and I'm a very informed parent, a lot of this stuff, I knew, but I didn't really know about. I mean, even the 211, I think, Tom, you were the first one that mentioned it, and I wasn't really that aware of it. And I think that sometimes with teenagers, yes, there are situations where maybe you do want to call 211 because maybe they're having a mental breakdown, or they're having, a really, really hard time. And I think there should be no shame and no issues with asking for help. So I think, we'll revisit, I think as a community, how we want to help each other by sharing all this wonderful information. So I think we should try to find a place for it somewhere, either on the PTA website. Obviously the recording will be available, but it, maybe something a little bit more hands-on for parents to know exactly where to go when they need for immediate help, other than the school, of course. So I think that we will all work towards that goal, I think. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I think, honestly, you guys were so incredible and so exhaustive, and so you went so in depth with the topic that I think that's why there's no questions. I think Stephanie and I were chatting earlier, and we were saying that I think there's no questions because you basically answered everything, because you're all just extremely good at your jobs, and we're very impressed with your presentation. So thank you so much.
May I say one more thing just before we go? Yeah. I'm so sorry. I know I keep doing this. I just want to also, I want to clarify. Yeah. I'm a chatter. I'm sorry. But I do want to clarify that a lot of students and parents become worried about students seeing mental health staff in the school because they think that it will somehow go on their record, or colleges will get this information. I just want to debunk that right now. We do not keep record of our conversations with students around mental health. There is confidentiality in between the student and the provider, if you will. So this is not something that goes in their record. This is not something that follows them anywhere. And I think that's really important for parents to know as well, because when they have an issue, they often hesitate to reach out because they don't want to jeopardize, the kid's future or post-secondary education or whatever. So I just want that to be clear as well. We don't keep record of it. It doesn't follow them. Those conversations are kept confidential within the team in order to support the student.
Thank you, Amanda, for pointing that out. Actually, that came up last year. We had a panel as well with one of your social workers, and she brought that up as well, which I think we need to remind parents constantly that there are these amazing resources, not only within our community, but also at school, and they are confidential and they are really set in place to help students, nothing else. There's no hidden agenda. There is no, stigma attached to it. There was one last question that I will just quickly, somebody answered it kind of, but Georgette answered, but is there a peer support group at GHS? Which actually kind of ties into the whole idea of groups helping each other. So peer support, I guess that would have to be led by somebody at the school. So I don't know if that's something that exists. Is that something that's set in place already?
I don't think for this year due to the COVID restrictions, but that's definitely something that I think they've had in years past for it. But again, it's a little bit more difficult now in terms of how we can meet with students and how many kids to be together. So I don't think in terms of what I was asking, there's a traditional peer support, but obviously each peer kind of supports one another. And somebody was chatting with somebody earlier. The kids are really good about, if they notice that their friends are struggling with something, about reaching out to adults to kind of make that connection. And so I would dare say that our students are very mentally, in terms of mental health, they're pretty on the ball. They kind of know when their friends aren't feeling so well, and they know exactly who to reach out to for that.
And in lieu
that's great. And sorry, I was going to say that's a great idea to have the peer-to-peer though, I think, right, in the future, something definitely worth looking into, I guess. Go ahead, sorry.
No, that's okay. It's me again. In lieu of a peer support or, a specific peer support group, Greenwich High School does offer a lot of different clubs that students can connect with each other on that kind of social level. I run the Greenwich Junior United Way, which is under the Greenwich United Way. It's a group outside of the school, but it's also now a club within Greenwich High School. We had our meeting tonight before this panel, and we're doing several different projects right now that the kids are really excited about. So there is absolutely opportunity for connection, and often based on the students' interests. So, the Greenwich Junior United Way is a community service group. We do a lot with like social justice and supporting our community. And we're doing a drive-by parade for ableist residents to spread some cheer and say hello and drop off some gifts. But a lot of the groups are, albeit virtual, they're very actively involved and participating in community events. So there is a webpage on the Greenwich High School website for clubs at Greenwich High School, and you can browse through and see all the different slides with information, and something might spark their interest, and they absolutely should join.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there are a bazillion amazing clubs. Yeah.
As many social interactions that kids can really participate in, or groups, that would be great. If you're looking for something specific, like helping your child learn new coping skills, or being able to connect with other kids that might be going through similar things than they are. Again, the Child Guidance Center of Southern Connecticut has several groups that we started for that purpose, and it's all through telehealth, so they can join from home. So you can go on our website and take a look at all the groups that we're running at this point.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Georgette. I think that's I don't think we have any other questions from the audience. I think, as I said, you guys are very exhaustive. So, and it's also getting kind of late for people. So I will, once again, thank you so much. And I will hand it over to Stephanie for her closing remarks.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much to the panelists for sharing this valuable information. I mean, I know for a fact how valuable your services are. We are just so thankful that you are in our community, in our schools, and supporting our parents and the children, of course, our students. So thank you guys so very much. Our meeting today has been recorded and we will be placed on the GHS PTA website. To Layla's point, we will look to find a place that's suitable to house some of the great information in PowerPoint that was provided tonight, because I really believe it was great. Terry and I would also like to thank you all for joining the meeting this evening. And one last message was to stay healthy and safe, and look forward to our next general membership meeting on March 18th. I was going to play, by the way, Sounds of Nature for that last ending, but I figured everyone would think I was silly. So thank you all so much. You guys are great, and have a good night. Thanks again.